Welcome to our channel. Alexander had never been more terrified in his life. But his legs, his miraculous, impossible legs, carried him toward the front door with a strength he hadn't felt in 20 years. Dr. Winters grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. "Alexander, wait. You don't understand what you're walking into. That crowd could kill you both." But Alexander could hear Sophia's screams now, high and desperate above the roar of the mob. The same child who had given him hope was being crushed by people seeking the very miracle she provided. "I won't let them hurt her," he said, his voice still. "Not after what she's done for me." He threw open his front door and stepped outside for the first time in months. The cold December air hit his face like a slap, but his legs held firm. 20 years of atrophied muscle should have collapsed under his weight. But somehow, miraculously, he was walking with the strength of a man half his age. The crowd at his gates had grown to nearly 200 people. Religious fanatics waved crosses and shouted prayers. Desperate parents held up photos of sick children. Media crews fought for position with their cameras. And in the center of it all, barely visible beneath the crushing mass of bodies, was a tiny pink coat. "Sophia!" Alexander roared, his voice carrying across the chaos. The crowd turned toward him as one, and a collective gasp rose from the mob. Word had spread that Alexander Kane was paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair, helpless. But here he stood on his own 2 feet, walking toward them with the confidence of a man who had nothing left to lose. "It's him," someone screamed. "The paralyzed millionaire. He's walking. Miracle, miracle, miracle." The crowd began chanting, but Alexander ignored them all. His eyes were locked on the spot where Sophia had disappeared, and he could see her small hand reaching up through the crowd, grasping desperately for air. He began to run. The sensation was indescribable. After 20 years of being trapped in a wheelchair, his legs carried him forward with a grace and power that defied medical explanation. He felt like he was flying, like every step was a gift from heaven itself. But as he reached the edge of the crowd, strong hands grabbed him from behind. "Mr. Kane, don't do this." The voice belonged to a man in an expensive suit, one of the people from the black sedan. "You'll only make things worse for everyone." Alexander spun around and found himself face to face with his ex-wife's divorce attorney, Richard Blackwood. Behind him stood 2 private investigators and, to Alexander's shock, Caroline herself. His ex-wife looked exactly the same as she had 5 years ago. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, and the cold, calculating eyes that had once fooled him into thinking she loved him. "Hello, Alexander," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Remarkable recovery, though I have to wonder how long it will last." "What are you doing here, Caroline?" "Protecting my interests," she said simply. "When we divorced, the settlement was based on your permanent disability, your medical expenses, your inability to work, your need for round-the-clock care. But if you're suddenly healed," Alexander's blood ran cold as he understood her implication. "You wanted to give back the settlement money." "Every penny," Richard Blackwood confirmed, "with interest. We're talking about $47 million, Mr. Kane. Money that was awarded based on fraudulent claims of permanent disability." "I wasn't fraudulent," Alexander shouted. But even as he said it, he could see how it looked. A man who hadn't walked in 20 years was suddenly running around like an Olympic athlete. "This just happened. A child touched my legs." "And a child?" Caroline laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You expect a judge to believe that a 6-year-old girl cured your severed spinal cord?" "Alexander, even you aren't that delusional." Behind them, the crowd was getting more violent. Sophia's cries were getting weaker, more desperate. Alexander could see her small form being pressed down by the weight of desperate people who thought touching her would heal their loved ones. "Move," Alexander said, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm afraid I can't do that," Richard said. "My client has legal papers that need to be served, and—" Alexander had never hit anyone in his life. He'd always solved problems with money or lawyers or quiet negotiations. But when he saw Sophia's tiny hand disappear completely beneath the crowd, something primal and protective erupted in his chest. His fist connected with Richard's jaw with a satisfying crack, sending the lawyer sprawling to the ground. The private investigators reached for him, but Alexander was already moving, his miracle legs carrying him into the crowd with unstoppable momentum. "Move," he shouted, pushing through the mass of bodies. "Get away from her." People scattered before him like leaves in a hurricane. Some recognized him from the news coverage of his accident 20 years ago. Others were simply intimidated by the raw determination in his eyes. But many of the desperate ones grabbed at him as he passed, begging him to heal their children, their spouses, their parents. "Please, Mr. Kane, my daughter has cancer. My husband is dying. Please touch my son. Make him walk like you can walk." Alexander ignored them all, fighting his way toward the center of the crowd, where Sophia lay motionless on the ground. When he finally reached her, his heart nearly stopped. She was unconscious, her tiny body curled in a protective ball, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Her pink coat was torn, and she was so small, so fragile that she looked like a broken doll discarded by an angry child. "Sophia," Alexander whispered, kneeling beside her and gently lifting her into his arms. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. When she saw him, a weak smile crossed her face. "Mr. Kane," she whispered, "you're standing." "Because of you," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Everything good in my life is because of you." The crowd pressed closer, reaching out to touch both of them. But Alexander stood up with Sophia in his arms and faced them with a fury that made even the most desperate people step back. "Enough," he roared, his voice echoing off the mansion walls. "This child is not your salvation. She's not your miracle cure. She's a 6-year-old girl who is hurt and scared because of your selfishness. But she healed you," someone shouted from the crowd. "She gave me hope," Alexander shot back. "Hope and love and the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. But you people turned that hope into a nightmare. You almost killed the most innocent person any of us will ever meet." Dr. Winters appeared at his side, having fought her way through the crowd with her medical bag. "We need to get her to a hospital," she said urgently, checking Sophia's pulse. "She's going into shock." But as they turned to leave, Caroline and her legal team blocked their path again. "I'm sorry, Alexander, but you're not going anywhere until this matter is resolved," Caroline said coldly. Richard, serving the papers. The lawyer, nursing his bruised jaw, pulled out a thick envelope. "Alexander Kane, you are hereby ordered to appear in court to answer charges of fraud and to arrange repayment of $47 million in divorce settlement." "Get out of my way," Alexander shouted. But more people had joined Caroline's team. Court officers, investigators, and what looked like federal agents in black suits. "Mr. Kane," one of the federal agents said, showing his badge, "I am Agent Morrison with the FBI. We need to speak with you about potential fraud involving disability benefits and insurance claims." Alexander stared at them in disbelief. "Are you insane? This child needs medical attention. She could be dying. The child will receive proper medical care," Agent Morrison said. "But first, we need to establish how your miraculous recovery occurred and whether any laws were broken in the process." Sophia stirred in Alexander's arms, her eyes opening wider. Despite her injuries, despite the chaos around them, she looked up at him with complete trust. "It's okay, Mr. Kane," she whispered. "They don't understand about miracles, but that doesn't make them less real." Her words hit Alexander like lightning. Here was a child who had been trampled by a mob, who was surrounded by adults arguing about money and legal papers, and she was comforting him. In that moment, Alexander Kane made the most important decision of his life. "Dr. Winters," he said quietly, "take Sophia to your car. Drive her to the hospital. I'll handle this." "Alexander, you can't." "I can and I will." He gently transferred Sophia into the doctor's arms, then turned to face Caroline, the federal agents, and the angry crowd with a calm that surprised even himself. "You want to know about miracles?" he asked, his voice carrying clearly over the chaos. "You want to understand how a paralyzed man suddenly learned to walk?" The crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. "2 days ago, I was the most miserable man alive," Alexander continued. "I had more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I had no hope, no joy, no reason to wake up in the morning. I was dead inside, even though my heart was still beating." He looked around at the faces surrounding him, desperate, angry, hopeful, skeptical. Then a 6-year-old girl knocked on my door. She was hungry, cold, and alone. She had nothing to offer me except her belief that broken things could be fixed. She didn't perform some magical healing ritual. She didn't chant mystical words or wave a magic wand. Alexander's voice grew stronger, more passionate. She loved me, a stranger, a bitter, angry stranger who had given up on everything good in the world. She loved me anyway. And that love, that pure, innocent, unconditional love, did something that 20 years of medical treatment couldn't do. The crowd was completely silent now, even a media crews lowering their cameras to listen. It gave me hope. And hope, ladies and gentlemen, is the most powerful medicine in the universe. When Sophia touched my legs and told me I would walk again, I believed her. Not because she was magic, but because she believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. Alexander took a step forward, his legs steady and strong. "The doctors will tell you it's impossible. They'll say severed spinal cords don't heal, that paralyzed nerves don't regenerate, and medically, they're right. But medicine can't measure love. Science can't quantify hope. And neither can explain what happens when someone looks at you and sees not what you are, but what you could become." He looked directly at Caroline, his ex-wife, who was staring at him with an expression he'd never seen before. "You want your money back?" he asked her quietly. "Take it. Take every penny. I don't need it anymore." Caroline's mouth fell open. "Alexander, you can't be serious. It's $47 million, and it's worth less than one night of believing in miracles," he replied. "Less than one moment of holding hope in my arms and knowing that tomorrow will be different than today." He turned to Agent Morrison. "You want to investigate fraud? Investigate this. For 20 years, I defrauded myself. I stole my own hope, embezzled my own joy, and cheated myself out of believing in the impossible. If that's not a crime, it should be." The federal agent looked confused. "Mr. Kane, I don't think you understand the seriousness of—" "I understand perfectly," Alexander interrupted. "You're investigating a miracle because miracles don't fit into your forms and procedures. But some things are bigger than paperwork, Agent Morrison. Some things are bigger than the law." He looked around at the crowd, seeing them with new eyes. They weren't just fanatics and desperate people anymore. They were human beings carrying burdens too heavy for their hearts, looking for someone to tell them that their pain mattered, that their loved ones could be saved, that tomorrow might bring healing. "You want to see a real miracle?" Alexander asked the crowd. "Stop looking for magic. Start looking for love. Stop waiting for someone else to heal your broken hearts and start healing each other's. The miracle isn't in Sophia's touch. It's in her choice to love strangers, to believe in impossible things, and to never give up hope, even when the whole world seems dark." As he spoke, something extraordinary began to happen. The angry shouting stopped. The desperate grabbing ceased. People began to step back, not in fear, but in something approaching reverence. An elderly woman in a wheelchair began to cry. "I came here because my grandson is dying of leukemia," she said through her tears. "I thought if that little girl could touch him, love him," Alexander said gently. "Love him so fiercely that he feels it in his bones. Hope for him so strongly that it becomes his hope, too. That's the only miracle any of us can give. A man holding a photo of a young woman spoke up. "My daughter was in a car accident. She's been in a coma for 3 months." "Sit with her," Alexander replied. "Talk to her. Sing to her. Tell her stories about the future you'll share when she wakes up. Fill her darkness with so much love that she can't help but find her way back to the light." One by one, people in the crowd began to speak stories of illness, of loss, of desperation. And one by one, Alexander gave them the same answer: love more, hope harder, never give up on each other. Dr. Winters appeared at his side, having returned from getting Sophia safely to her car. "The ambulance is here," she said quietly. "Sophia is stable, but she needs to get to the hospital." Alexander nodded, then addressed the crowd one final time. "I have to go now," he said. "The little girl who taught me about miracles needs me. But before I leave, I want you all to remember something. You didn't need to come here today. You already had everything you needed to heal the people you love. You had your hearts, your hope, and your refusal to give up. That's where real miracles come from." He started walking toward the ambulance, his legs carrying him with steady strength. "Mr. Kane," someone called from the crowd. "What if we can't do it? What if love isn't enough?" Alexander paused and looked back at the hundreds of faces watching him. "Then you love harder," he said simply. "And if that's not enough, you love harder still. You keep loving until the impossible becomes inevitable." As he climbed into the ambulance beside Sophia's stretcher, Alexander heard something he never expected: applause. Not the desperate, grasping noise of a mob, but the respectful, hopeful applause of people who had just remembered what it meant to believe in each other. Caroline appeared at the ambulance door as it was about to close. "Alexander," she said, and for the first time in years, there were tears in her eyes. "I am sorry about the money, about the lawyers, about everything. I forgot who you used to be." "I forgot too," Alexander replied. "But Sophia reminded me that it's never too late to remember." The ambulance doors closed, and as they raced toward the hospital, Alexander held Sophia's tiny hand in his own. She was unconscious again, but her breathing was steady, and there was a peaceful smile on her face. Dr. Winters sat across from them, shaking her head in amazement. "I've run every test I can think of," she said. "Your spinal cord shows complete regeneration, new nerve growth that should be medically impossible. Your muscle tone is that of a healthy 30-year-old man, despite 20 years of atrophy." And Alexander asked, though he already knew what she was going to say, "And I have no scientific explanation for any of it. According to everything I know about medicine, you should still be paralyzed. But you're not. You're walking, running, carrying a child through an angry mob like some kind of superhero." Alexander smiled, squeezing Sophia's hand gently. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe the best miracles are the ones that can't be explained, only experienced." At the hospital, Sophia was rushed into emergency care while Alexander paced the waiting room. The sensation in his legs was stronger than ever, as if her proximity somehow amplified whatever had happened to him. Dr. Winters emerged from the examination room an hour later, smiling. "She's going to be fine," she announced. "Mild concussion, some bruising, but nothing that won't heal. She's asking for you." Alexander practically ran to Sophia's room. She was sitting up in the hospital bed, looking tiny in the adult-sized gown, but her eyes were bright and alert. "Mr. Kane," she said happily, "you came, and you're still walking." "I told you I would," he said, settling into the chair beside her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. The doctors are very nice, but they keep asking me how I made you walk again." She giggled. "I told them it was love, but they want to write it down in their books." Alexander laughed, the sound foreign after so many years of bitterness. "Love is hard to write down, isn't it? Grandma always said the best things can't be written down. They have to be felt, Sophia's expression grew serious. Mr. Kane, are you in trouble because of me? Those people with the papers seemed very angry. No, sweetheart, I'm not in trouble. And even if I was, it would be worth it. You gave me something more valuable than all the money in the world. What's that? You gave me back my life. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A young woman with tired eyes and work-worn hands peeked into the room. Sophia, she said uncertainly. Baby, are you okay? Sophia's face lit up like the sun. Mama, the woman, who could only be Sophia's mother, rushed to the bedside and gathered her daughter into a fierce hug. Alexander could see the family resemblance now. The same bright blue eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same aura of strength despite difficult circumstances. I'm Grace Thompson, she said to Alexander, tears streaming down her face. I came as soon as I heard. The whole city is talking about what happened. Are you really the man whose legs Sophia healed? Yes, I am, and I owe your daughter more than I could repay in 100 lifetimes. Grace looked bewildered. I don't understand any of this. Sophia has always been special, always believed in impossible things, but healing paralyzed people. That can't be real. Mama, Sophia said seriously, remember what Grandma used to say? Miracles happen when people love each other hard enough to believe in magic. Grace's eyes filled with fresh tears. Your grandmother always said that, didn't she? Alexander watched the interaction with growing understanding. Mrs. Thompson, may I ask, was Sophia very close to your mother? They were inseparable, Grace said. Mom raised Sophia while I worked, told her stories about miracles and love and believing in the impossible. When Mom died last year from cancer, Sophia was heartbroken. She kept saying that if she could just love hard enough, she could heal people the way Grandma would have wanted. The pieces fell into place in Alexander's mind. This wasn't about supernatural powers or religious miracles. This was about a little girl who had learned about love from her grandmother, who believed so completely in the power of caring for others that she could inspire miracles in the people around her. She's remarkable, Alexander said softly. And so are you, for raising someone with such a beautiful heart. Grace wiped her eyes. Mr. Kane, I have to ask. The reporters outside are saying you're giving away millions of dollars because of what Sophia did. Is that true? Every word, Alexander confirmed. And it's the best decision I've ever made. But why? Alexander looked at Sophia, who was falling asleep again in her mother's arms, and felt his heart swell with love for this incredible little family. Because some things are more valuable than money, he said, and your daughter taught me what those things are. Over the next few weeks, Alexander's life transformed completely. He sold his massive, lonely mansion and moved into a comfortable house near Grace and Sophia's neighborhood. The $47 million settlement went to Caroline without argument, but Alexander discovered that his miracle healing had created opportunities he never expected. Medical research facilities around the world wanted to study his case. Book publishers offered millions for his story. Movie producers called daily with offers to buy the rights to his miracle healing. But Alexander turned them all down. Instead, he used his remaining wealth to establish the Sophia Thompson Foundation for Childhood Cancer Research, named after the little girl who had changed his life. He also opened a free clinic in their neighborhood where families like Grace's could get medical care without worrying about the cost. The most amazing part was that his healing continued to progress. Each day brought new strength, new sensation, new abilities he hadn't possessed in 20 years. Dr. Winters documented everything, but still couldn't explain how it was happening. It's like your body is remembering how to be healthy, she told him during one of his regular checkups. The nerve regeneration is unprecedented. You're not just walking. You're stronger than most men your age who were never injured. Alexander knew the real reason, though he never tried to explain it to the doctors. Every day, he spent time with Sophia and Grace. They had dinner together, watched movies, played games, and slowly became the family none of them had ever had. And every day, in the presence of Sophia's unwavering love and hope, he felt himself healing, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. The bitter, angry man who had wasted 20 years feeling sorry for himself was gone, replaced by someone who understood that miracles weren't about defying medical science. They were about discovering what happened when people chose to love each other despite impossible circumstances. 6 months after that cold December night, when Sophia first knocked on his door, Alexander Kane walked Grace Thompson down the aisle at their wedding. The small ceremony was held in the community center where Sophia's grandmother had volunteered before her death, surrounded by neighbors, friends, and the found family they had created together. Sophia, wearing a beautiful white dress that Alexander had bought her, served as both flower girl and the officiant's assistant. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, she stood up in her tiny chair and announced, "I object to anyone who doesn't believe in miracles, because my new daddy is living proof that love can fix anything." The congregation erupted in laughter and applause, and Alexander felt his heart overflow with a happiness he had never imagined possible. As they exchanged vows, Alexander promised Grace not just to love and honor her, but to spend every day of his healed life proving that miracles weren't just possible. They were inevitable when people refused to give up on each other. And Sophia, sitting in the front row with the biggest smile anyone had ever seen, whispered to herself, "Grandma was right. Love really can heal anything." The little girl who had asked a paralyzed millionaire to trade his leftovers for a cure had done more than heal his broken body. She had healed his broken spirit, brought together a broken family, and proven that the most powerful miracles weren't the ones that defied medical science. They were the ones that reminded people what it meant to hope, to love, and to believe in tomorrow. Alexander Kane walked out of that chapel on legs that worked perfectly, holding the hands of his new wife and daughter, surrounded by a community that had learned to believe in miracles because they had witnessed the greatest miracle of all, the healing power of unconditional love. The poor girl who had knocked on a bitter man's door asking for leftovers had received exactly what she had asked for. Not food, but the miracle of seeing someone learn to walk again. Not just with their legs, but with their heart. And in the end, that was the only miracle that really mattered. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Because sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones that remind us miracles happen every day when we choose to love each other.